everyone, and welcome to Dissonant Dialogues. I'm Emily, and you'll notice that Claire is missing today. So for our last two episodes of the season, we decided to each take an episode and invite a guest on a topic of our choice. So my episode is, of course, tailored to the music education side of things, and you'll be seeing Claire's episode shortly after this one airs. So today I'm here with a very special guest. He started playing the violin at the age of 5, graduating from DePaul University with a bachelor's in music education and later a master's in music education at Northern Illinois University. He currently teaches the orchestral program at Vernon Hills High School and the Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra. Let us welcome Dana Green. Dana, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Doing pretty well. Getting a good start off to the summer. You know, it's never, which we'll probably get into, it's never really a break for teachers. It's just catching up on all the stuff that we couldn't do and just doing more. I think summer can be some of the busiest time for musicians and music teachers.
What projects are you in the middle of right now?
Right now, what's taking up the most of my time is the Opera Festival of Chicago. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but yeah, I'm participating in their pit orchestra. It's just been incredible. But you know, when this is our week of performances, so it's like crazy busy.
How many productions is it? Is it like kind of quick turnaround from production to production, or is it you're really drilling down on one? Or I don't know how it works.
Yeah, no, they have a couple productions right now. This was kind of a student opportunity for me because technically I'm still a student as I'm transitioning to the student teaching side of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm participating in one which is like 2 weeks practicing and then the show. So yeah, it's taking.
What's the show?
Puccini's Manon Lescaut. Have you heard of it?
Alrighty. I know Puccini. I don't know that show though.
I didn't know it either, but it's incredible. My God, the cast is just amazing so far. And I'm also doing. I was asked to market some of their social media stuff, so it's been fun. It's a lot of stuff. So
how are the violin parts?
You know, they're not bad. I've played worse in terms of difficulty.
All right.
So I'm okay. I'm kind of enjoying it. Yeah, it's good. Did I miss anything in my shortly constructed bio of you that you would like to add, or did I do pretty good?
No, you did a great job. I am pursuing another master's at the University of Colorado, Pueblo, in curriculum and instruction, but that's DL, so I haven't really. It's pretty dry educational stuff, which does not make for a great conversation. But that's the only other educational bit. I did get my Suzuki certification level 1.
No, yeah. I love too how today we both decided to wear green. Because this was slightly intentional. We'll get into like how I met Dana, but for interview that we did before when I was giving my presentation on you in the interview that we did like a year or 2 ago, I started it off by saying, oh, the music teacher I chose to interview is Dana Green. No coincidence that the presentation's also green, and everybody thought it was funny.
Nice.
So I was like, oh, this is perfect. And at my school, we have a professor named Dana Brown. So we always, and a lot of people know you, so we crack jokes like in the Chicagoland area, where's Dana Blue? Where's Dana Pink? Yeah. Before we get into our main topic today, Dana and I kind of met in an interesting way because I was not in his CYSO group, but I was in CYSO. We actually met in a summer chamber music camp. So I was placed as your TA, which basically for the camp, like it was my responsibility to take notes of what Dana, the faculty, was like running the rehearsals and doing and our progress and everything that was happening throughout the week. And I don't know that I ever told you this actually, but on the side, like I was just so inspired by your teaching and my first time observing you teach. And I liked your teaching analogies and just like the strategies that you were using. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I want to steal that. So on my paper, I was taking notes. I got like another piece of paper and I was like writing down your strategies. And I have everything in like a file of everybody's strategies that I'm like stealing. Everyone does it. So like, yeah, I was just really inspired by your teaching and like ways that you'd use to instruct students. And I was teaching privately at the time. So I was kind of like testing the waters and learning like my own teaching strategies. So that's kind of what initially caught my attention. And then like I was talking about that project that I had to do a couple of years ago, kind of in the middle of my music education degree, as we were learning about universal design, which is an educational framework for more inclusive teaching. And we were told to pick a teacher that we wanted to interview and ask some universal design questions related to. And that, I don't think all of the interview is there. We just did snippets, but my research project on that is in the research tab of my website, if anyone's interested in looking into that. But then, yeah, ultimately just observations that I needed to get as a music ed major. So I observed at CYSO quite a couple times and also then Vernon Hills, which for me, that was like a complete culture shock. I also don't think we talked about that, but when I came to Vernon Hills to observe, like, I don't know if it's just like the competitiveness of like conservatory, like where I've been like living, horse blinders, like away from the world and like everything and how it is there, but like going to Vernon Hills and seeing like just how kind everybody was and everyone talked to everybody, even in the hallway, just walking down. It's like it wasn't just like a hey, how are you doing, but it was like genuine conversation and everybody knew everybody. And it was just, yeah, like culture shock sort of thing. Everything was really nice there and I already knew you. And I'm like, well, this is a wonderful place to student teach. So yeah, I will be student teaching there starting in October this year, which I'm very excited about. So that's kind of our history.
And we're really
Yeah.
excited to have you. I mean, Emily, your footprint online is not small, and so it's easy to see evidence of really great teaching. So I probably shared this with you, but just having kind of experienced a couple of your lessons just through observation, I see really good instincts and sharp pedagogy. So I look forward to learning from you in the fall.
Thank
And
you.
your point about like the things you see and that you like and you write down. I mean, I think really good teachers are excellent thieves, right? I mean, we
Mhm.
stand on the shoulders of giants, the people that came before us, and it's a great practice to find stuff that works for you, and certainly, don't use the rest. But any great idea I've ever had, I think, has not entirely been my own. I'm glad that they're still useful. And
Yeah.
then with respect to culture, yeah, Vernon Hills is a really um, unique community in that it's small. Like Vernon Hills High School, I think our total student population is, I don't even think we're at 1,300. Um,
Oh, really? Wow.
my high school where I'm from, I'm from the south suburbs of Chicago called Flossmoor, from a place called Flossmoor. Then I went to HF, where student body was something like 4,400, 4,500. And you feel like you're part of a small city. And when I was teaching out of Naperville at Naperville North High School, I liked the large school, but certainly you don't have that small community feel that I think you experienced when you came to visit Vernon Hills. And the really neat thing about Vernon Hills is where there might not be 1,300 kids at the school total, you have closing in on 190 kids involved in the orchestra program alone. So that's a really high percentage of kids that are involved just in orchestra. Of course, that's not counting band or choir. So yeah, it's a
Mhm.
neat, artistic, small community.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. So today we are basically talking about the transition of being the one who's sitting quietly in your chair to standing on the podium, the transition from being a music student to being the music educator, which I feel like is something that's not talked about a lot. I mean, I always kind of had concerns and questions, which we'll get into, like when I had first started my degree and even before that. And now that I'm at this point where I'm getting close to ending it and going into student teaching, I'm having freshmen coming up to me being like, how do you feel ready? Like, how are you, like, do you feel prepared? Like what? And there's so much about it that we kind of talk about that I feel like isn't talked about much. So I think this will be a really great episode for people like me to talk about. So um, we kind of did already a background on you, but I'm curious, what was the moment that you knew you wanted to teach music? I know for some people, it's like you have that one breakthrough moment, you're like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And others, it's like accumulation of like multiple things.
Well, I came by music honestly, meaning that both my parents were, I should say, they're retired now, involved in music from a performance and education standpoint. My mother taught music education at various levels, elementary and middle school, and sang with the Chicago Symphony Chorus. And then my father was timpanist with Grant Park Symphony and principal percussionist with Lyric Opera of Chicago, and played sublist with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and was head of percussion studies at DePaul University for something like 87,000 years. So yeah, I mean, I was always exposed to this amazing magical world of music. My father took me on tour with the Chicago Symphony to Japan and
Wow.
Germany, and my mother took me to Europe as well, and we traveled all over the continent. And I saw what doors culture could open, and also what having that as a common starting place for people that maybe weren't from your same background, French, German, Spanish, whatever it is, Japanese. There's this immediate linkage and this immediate into to a relationship. And I just couldn't believe the magic of that message. So I knew music was going to be kind of where I was headed, or something cultural, just because I just saw that as a really great way to feel that universal oneness with people in the world. I don't know that it was until I was in high school with my high school orchestra director, a guy named Dr. Michael Rogers, who got I think a degree in music education and maybe organ performance from University of Chicago. And I just saw charisma and command, and like he has this distended brain of knowledge, and he knew a way to sell every single composer and the connection to history to make anyone a fan of classical music. And I think that's when I saw a way into music for me. I don't and didn't have the discipline to practice the requisite 26 hours a day to become competitive the way that you need to. I knew I didn't have that discipline. And I thought music education would be a really great calling, honestly. People that were involved in my high school orchestra program, and I hope Dr. Rogers knows that this is the way it was. I'm sure he does. But everyone felt like they were part of a community, part of a family, part of something bigger than themselves, something beautiful. There was meaning in that. And I thought that would be a really great thing to offer future generations of learners in my own classroom. I'm certainly no equal to Dr. Rogers, but I'm trying to be equal, at least to the mission.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. That's interesting. Like I think for me too, it wasn't a music teacher necessarily that immediately inspired me to want to go into music. Like I knew that I loved music and I knew like I loved performing. But I think the wanting to be a teacher side came from having a teacher leaving a big impact on me,
Yeah.
which sometimes surprises people that it was my high school chemistry teacher. And I was horrible at science, like math and science, like I was awful at it. But it came in a time in my life where I was first developing a chronic illness. I'd never dealt with it before, didn't really know what it was. It was like, it felt like it was destroying my life from everywhere, like everything was falling apart. And my chemistry teacher was the one that kind of helped me get out of that tough place and take better control. And I was so sick at the time. I was missing so much school, and I started off with a D in the class, and I left with an A in chemistry, which was impressive for me
Yeah.
when it comes to chemistry. So I think it just goes to show what a really great teacher, what kind of impact that they can have. And ultimately, when I saw how she handled me in my circumstances versus how some other teachers handled my circumstances, not really caring or putting in that kind of effort, it made me realize what kind of teacher that I could be, and how most of the time it is music that, or it is the music teachers that leave that impact. It's that space for emotional vulnerability. And yeah, the cool thing, I just gave my senior recital a couple months ago now, and I hadn't seen my chemistry teacher in so long. And I sent an email and I'm like, hey, senior recital is coming up if you'd like to come. And she came. Oh, it was so cool.
That's
I get
amazing.
to see her and for her to see me play. And yeah, really cool moment.
Well,
Uh,
can I ask you? I mean, this maybe is like of interest to even people outside of education or music. I don't know. These are like when we think about the things that make a good teacher. I think those terms, those characteristics can be used for leadership as well, which is I think something everyone should strive to have strong pillars of uh, uh, strength, I guess, to be redundant on that. So like, what about your chemistry teacher? Getting to the question, what about your chemistry teacher? What about teachers in general? What makes a good teacher to you? I'm always interested in this question because I feel like it's the same way for adults who ask, I don't know, kids what they want to be when they grow up. I'm always looking for ideas, like
mhm.
what is it?
Yeah. I think about this one in particular. It was more so of who she was as a person.
Hmm.
Because at that time in my life, I felt just so weak and vulnerable.
Yeah.
And she was an example of just this like strong, powerful woman. Like not that there's anything wrong with being like very sweet and like delicate, kind woman, but she was not that. She was very like to the point she would advocate for whatever she wanted. She was very tough, very strong, and she was just that example to me. And whenever she talked to me about like stuff she'd gone through in her life as an example, and like how what she did to help herself, and like that was inspiration to me of like, I want to be like that. Like, I don't want to be this weak person anymore. I want to take control, figure out what I have to figure out for my health and my life, and get back to where I want to be. And that was like an example that I could follow.
Mm.
And then even just, yeah, as a teacher, I think being someone who genuinely cares about your students, like
Mm.
I used to struggle to remember my students' names. Like I teach some group classes and stuff too that like I'll get into, but I used to struggle then with like multiple students, like remembering names and things about students. I even have some student files for like my music students, but getting to a place where I don't have to struggle with that anymore, where I just remember, I think that is something where I'm like, okay, now I genuinely know the student. Like I care about the student and I can follow up on stuff with the student. And it just, that kind of genuine care, I think it's very important.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely heard right like out of the gate empathy and compassion from that teacher of yours, and I like your mnemonic device, which is not a mnemonic device at all for remembering kids' names. It's not there's no trick to it. It's just really getting to know the kid, and then there's magically you know their name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I used to use little like tricks and stuff to remember, but I'm like, I want to get to the place where I don't have to do that
Yes.
because I remember them so well. I'm curious, what was the transition for you like when you were exiting the like college lifestyle, having college classes, being on a campus, and then entering student teaching? Like, did you feel prepared for that transition or nervous or ready?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm a lot like everyone who struggles with or is anxious about change. I used to be so bad about it. I'd mourn the passing of seasons, just any kind of transition into a new experience was something that maybe this isn't everybody. Maybe it is just people like me who tend to, anticipate anything with a little bit of, oh God, what could go wrong? So I definitely had that ringing in my ears. And my first assignment was middle school, which I did not find any less intimidating or more, I suppose, than high school. Because, yeah, it was a total shift from being uh, in front of the podium to behind the podium, right? Being a passenger to being a driver. So that was, didn't, I didn't, I mean, I was excited about it for sure. There was like 20% excitement, maybe 80% terror and apprehension. So that was the lead up. I had a great cooperating teacher though. I student taught at a place called River Trails in Mount Prospect, and my cooperating teacher's name is the storied and wonderful. Everyone seems to know this woman's name. She's retired now, but I think she's still working in music education even after retirement. Ann Foreman, very kind, compassionate, skilled teacher, and was gentle with me at first, but I think saw that there was a spark of curiosity in me that would drive me through the experience and help me be successful. Honestly, Emily, I don't think I was a real shining example of a music education student at DePaul. Honestly, like talking to, I'm sure any of the very patient and understanding teachers that I had, whether it be, my flute methods teacher, Mary Stolper, who didn't give up on me, to Matt Lee, who fabulous trumpet player for lyric opera, and couldn't get me to make a sound out of my mouthpiece even. I don't think that the math was real good on me being successful in music education. It didn't really click for me until I was in front of students, honestly.
Really? Wow.
And I found a confidence and, dare I say, a hint of magnetism and charisma. Maybe not charisma. I'll say passion for what we were all trying to do together. The classroom is like a feedback loop. Um, Sometimes what you put out there is what you get reflected back. And that was certainly the way it was for me in student teaching. It seemed to be electric every single time I got in front of the kids.
I don't really say this to many people. I'm just kind of now starting to talk about it because I don't have to worry about the embarrassment or effect I guess it could have on my career or my reputation. But when I first entered music school and with the double major, music education, violin performance, I knew I wanted to teach privately because I was already doing that and I loved that. I'm like, great. And so that's kind of why I was going forward with the music ed degree. But little shy me at the time was like, okay, I can never teach a classroom, like never. I can't stand in front of a classroom with like 25 plus kids and have to control them and manage all of them. Like I just can't do it. Like no way, I can never see myself doing it. And that's why I have a lot of like freshmen coming to me and saying the same thing, like, do you feel ready? And I find it interesting that over the next few years of music school, how I just developed the tools, learned the tools, and I feel like, okay, I have these tools, like I'm ready. I just want to go and teach now. Like I don't want to be sitting here in a classroom. I want to be teaching the classroom. And I think what's really helped me that I would recommend to anybody that can manage it, because it was very intense, is teaching lessons on the side while you're in school. It was already very intense doing a double degree, and I got mine. It was supposed to be 5 years. I got it shortened down to 4.5. And with that, and teaching privately and teaching group classes, like it was totally worth it because as you're being taught the tools, you get to try them out at the same time. And that's something that like my music ed advisor would always say, like, I wish you guys could also be teaching at the same time, because it's like you're learning all this stuff and you can't apply it until you student teach. And that was the best for me, was that I got to test things out and ultimately got more comfortable. And I think that's why I feel more ready now too, is I'm not just being thrown into it like I've never done it before. And also, sometimes I've like gone to different classrooms when I've observed before. Some teachers are like, okay, you spent enough time sitting there observing, go teach this next class. And I'm like, okay. And you just go right into it. So yeah, that was kind of my mindset transition. I didn't really like to say that because I'm like, I can't say that I can't teach in front of a classroom. Like no one's going to take me seriously. And I was so shy and afraid. And I think a lot of people think that way too, the more I'm realizing it.
Sure. I mean, and kind of like bringing even a little bit more, I don't know, difficulty to that first experience is that most music education students are not that much older than the high school
Mhm.
counterparts that they're being asked to command, or work with, run a classroom, people to buy. So that can be kind of intimidating too. I mean, if you have an 18-year-old in your classroom and you're 22, that's
Mhm.
that's pretty close. Um, but heck, I've had student teachers that were, in their mid 40s who were just as intimidated by that high school age, because it can seem like it's a lot to keep the students engaged and entertained, particularly when you like load your shoulders with the expectation that you be as entertaining as a professional comedian, and have the command of Sir George Schulte, and the technique of I don't know, Rachel Barton or something like that. Like
Mhm.
it's I think that we have so high expectations for ourselves, particularly when we step on that podium, and that we have it all figured out before that first lesson. Um, but I think back to your point about how proactive you've been to get experience. And I'm glad that you threw in there, if you can handle it, because I don't
Mhm.
think everyone can. I don't think I could handle your schedule. But I'm glad that you have had the experience, because I think with every job, everyone that I've talked to who has had that transition from undergraduate to that first job, there's a recognition that it's like something like 90% of the stuff you need to know to do that job, you learn on the job.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
College is great preparation, no doubt. There's a lot of, I mean, you fill your pockets full of however many skills you can while you're doing that undergrad, but that experience of doing the
Mhm.
job, that's the real teacher there. And I think you got that great experience while obviously building your knowledge bank, and getting the experience of being a college student. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, I think I'm happy you're feeling ready to go. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very happy with the transition, how everything's been these past few years, feeling finally ready. This next question I really have been dying to ask you, because I have a few friends that are like a couple years older than me that have also majored in music education, and now some are like teaching at schools themselves now. And they've talked about the shock of having that mentor teacher, cooperating teacher, to then being the only teacher. So going from student teaching then to just your own classroom teaching completely on your own. So I'm curious if you remember what that transition was like, exiting student teaching and then you being the teacher.
Yeah, no, I remember I interviewed at Naperville North High School, and when the principal, for some reason, thought it'd be a great idea to call me and offer me the job, and he asked me, "So, would you like will you be our orchestra director?" My response to him was, "I think so," which is not the response he was expecting to get. And he's like, "Well, you want to like maybe try that answer again?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. It's an honor." Blah blah blah. And then after that, I broke out into like a super like cold sweat, and then went through all the scenarios that were going to happen. I was living in Chicago at the time, and Naperville is, and traffic is a 14-hour plane ride away. So it was relocating out to the suburbs, and then trying to figure out like so many different things before that first day of school. And yeah, you're right, Emily. Like it's super intimidating. I was on the phone with both of my cooperating teachers, Ann Foreman and great guy named Dan O'Connell, who was at Addison Trail High School. And like there was nothing either one of them could tell me that was going to make me feel better, other than this is so much of a bigger deal than you think it is, which is totally true. I catastrophize. I think a lot of people do this, but I definitely am a catastrophizer. It's like, all right, gonna step in front of those kids, and then there's going to be like a full court mutiny. And then no, I got to figure out like how do I deal with the mutiny on the first day? Like, what do I tell my supervisor on the? It was nothing like that. But yeah, again, just sort of like the student teaching thing, where I was just a little bit on edge about what to expect. The actual practice of being in that classroom and figuring out, okay, no, I can kind of do this. The hardest part for me, I think, was, and I'd be happy to go back to this because this is a huge theme for me, is identity. I didn't really do much work on who I was on the podium when I was student teaching. I think it was like a hybrid of like who my cooperating teacher was, who my my orchestra director was in college, kind of between those two ideas. And not, there was like maybe 2% of a shred of me in there. So when it was just me on the podium, I did my best impersonation of my college orchestra director, who was a great, amazing orchestra director. He has passed. He actually passed earlier this year, unfortunately, Dr. Cliff Colnut. Amazing rehearsal technician, just incredible. But I think only Cliff Colnut can be Cliff Colnut. Just as, honestly, only I can be me. And I think that that's a special thing to guard, to develop, and certainly to identify. There's only one of you, and that's special. That's amazing. Why would you bother being anyone other than yourself? And I did not realize that until maybe my second year of teaching, when I was still like, questing for who I was supposed to be in front of these young people. Like, it was enough just to be me. So those kind of big questions, I think, were really persistent in my first year and into that first year. So that's I guess that's a really long way of saying I was real nervous, I was real uncertain, and it was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, that is such a good point about the identity part. Like I feel like I'm having my own identity crisis here. And so it kind of makes sense to hear you say that. But I guess when you think about it, I mean, whether you're solely a music ed major or like music ed and performance, like you're constantly criticized for like 4 years in music school and told about everything that you're doing wrong that needs to be fixed, sometimes in kind ways, sometimes in not so kind ways. And I think after those 4 years, you get so used to that culture and that environment and constantly like evaluating yourself almost to an unhealthy extent, to not thinking about what you're doing right, and you kind of lose a sense of who you are through that. So yeah, when we get to that point where we have to step on the podium, it's like I only know what I've seen other people do. I don't know who I am yet. And I think, yeah, you're right. I feel like I'm kind of at that place too. Like I've thought of a few different teachers I've observed, and I take little like snippets of them, and I'm still kind of coming up with me. Do you know approximately how long it took you to get to a place where you're like, okay, this is me as a teacher?
Oh man, I don't even know who I am. Like, I don't know. Like
Still
honestly, no, I don't. I mean, like I certainly who I am in front of the kids is an extension of who I am not in front of the kids. Maybe it's just like it's a performance. 100% it is, Emily.
Yeah.
When you're in front of the kids, because you at the heart of wisdom is curiosity. And the only way you're going to get them to mastery is if they have an interest in the subject matter. So yeah, I'm dancing as hard as I can. I enjoy to dance, but my personality on the podium is probably like who I am off the podium. The power of 10, it's multiplied out for sure. But questions of identity, gosh, man, back to the point of who you are off the podium is who you are on the podium. I am now embracing the fact that I am still exploring that question in trying to do so with gladness in my heart, for sure. I mean, at this point, I'm in my I'm 43, so there are those like really important and profound questions that people around my age ask themselves about meaning, and so that's now informed my teaching. The why behind teaching is something I always thought I was interested in until I realized that the why behind everything I do at this point is something that I question, and not in a identity crisis kind of way, but more of a I have a renewed curiosity about the value of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and how that can serve to make my teaching more profound, more thoughtful, and more meaningful for myself, for sure, and also the students. So yeah, I guess it's still happening, Emily.
It's just
I,
constantly evolving.
yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. Okay. So it's not like I have to have everything figured out by a certain point. Like
Oh,
it's
geez, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think I thought that of adults. But when I was in high school or middle school, like man, I think I'd be horrified to know how clueless all of us always are.
Yeah, at the same time, it's terrifying and comforting at the same time. I
Yes,
think knowing that everybody doesn't really know
both.
what they're doing, we're just doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very liberating too if you look at it the right way.
Yeah, exactly. What is your advice to current music ed students on how to prepare themselves for student teaching, aka me?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it is kind of interesting having this conversation with you. But I will aim it towards the general audience. It seems like what you've talked about already, getting as much experience as you can, observing as many people as you can, bringing that notebook with you or whatever it is that you use to take notes. Uh, geez, writing down the things you like about other teachers, and writing down the things you don't like about teachers that you've observed. Observe every single kind of teacher that there is, the master teacher, and also the new teacher. There's something to be learned from, I think, every different kind of teacher. Making sure that your technique on your instrument is solid. That can be difficult because of the demands of a music education schedule. Going from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then beyond that, writing your papers or doing your research. It can be difficult to get that, 2.5 hours, 3 hours of practice in, but
8 p.m. We had studio class till 10 p.m.
Oh, geez. Man, it is rough going out there. Yeah. But I really do think it's important to be able to model for students on an instrument in a way that is characteristic and beautiful. Because there are some things that communicating through an instrument can't be communicated verbally. I think, you're not going to know who you are as a teacher, in front of the kids, but I think having a knowledge of where your well for inspiration is important. Knowing where to go to find inspiration, and maybe that's going to see a show at I don't know, the Green Mill. Maybe it's checking out Chicago Symphony. Maybe it's playing chamber music with friends. Or maybe it's, if you can, like continuing to play, being part of a community orchestra or whatever it is. I think just keeping interested in knowing what drives you to be this lightning rod of passion and attention for the kids, I think is a good thing to know and to have in your hand before you even start student teaching.
Mhm.
I didn't know how to work an iron before I started student teaching. And the band director, he just retired this year from Madison Trail, Mark Corey. I remember he waited until the principal was coming in to meet me to just give me all kinds of crap for how wrinkly my clothes were. So figured that one out. Um, yeah, I think that's a pretty good list.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you know of this, but I actually started coaching figure skating lessons
No.
almost 2 months ago at this point. But yeah, when I was younger, I did figure skating for quite a while, and one of the main reasons I stopped was to focus on music. Then I just couldn't manage both. Um, and yeah, I basically I started coaching skating for two reasons. One, like financial support, much needed, but also to have my own safe space kind of away from music. I've had teachers tell me like forever to have something else other than music. I just wanted everything to be music all the time in some way, whether it's marketing music stuff on social media, performing, teaching, everything had to be tied back to music. And they were always like, have something else, have another place away from music that's healthy. And I was like, no. And I was all stubborn. Now I finally did it. And oh my God, they were so right. And those two teachers I'm thinking about, they're still in my life. And I told them, like, you were right. And they're like, yeah, we know. But ultimately, yeah, no, it was the best choice. I would say to anybody, have in music, have your own, whether that's yoga classes or
Mm,
you have like a running group, like have something, especially athletic. I think
totally.
it's really like helpful just to keep you healthy. So for me, that's really good. But specifically, I know we talked like, when was the last time I observed, like 6 months ago? And I remember you asking me about what I was worried about for student teaching, what I thought I needed work on. And I was like, oh my God, the confidence in front of a classroom. Like I don't have that confidence anymore. Within the past 2 months of coaching figure skating, that is like required of you to be able to go on an ice rink with multiple kids, various ages. They can be as young as 4 years old and like can barely even walk. And then you put them with blades on their feet on ice, teaching those like groups of those kids all the way up to like teen and adult classes. And it could be just like a huge mix, different levels, different students. And when you're out there by yourself with multiple kids on a boomy ice rink, and there are other coaches with different groups like yelling loud, you develop teacher voice. So that's coming to me, and you have to develop some sort of confidence to be able to do
Mm.
that. And I think that's what I've learned the most in right now is getting that confidence from there. I always struggle with managing the younger boys that are crazy. I've been told, oh, it's because you're a young woman. So naturally they think they can just kind of take advantage and like talk over you. And I see that happen a lot. And already over the past 2 months, I've learned how to manage that while still being a nice, genuine, caring teacher, but also being firm at certain points. Um, and yeah, I feel very proud of that. It was actually just a couple days ago I was coaching, and I had what I called my teacher breakthrough, where I coached two classes in a row by myself, and it was almost like a performance. Like when you get in that like optimal state when you're performing and it just feels so free and like nothing, it felt that way for me teaching finally, and everything went super smoothly. And all my kids passed on to the next level for their next session. So it felt very rewarding. I think figure skating, coaching that in particular, was really good for me. But having something like that on the side, I think is very healthy for anybody getting ready for student teaching. Um, Also, kind of like you mentioned, lots of observations. So observing school teachers, also observing private teachers. A
Hmm.
lot of the stuff that you learn there is interchangeable. So I've like stolen stuff from different places and used them in different places. Um, and yeah, I mean, if you can, getting practice teaching. I've done private teaching for 4 years now. So with the experience of like before music school, who I was then teaching, to during music school, who I was then, to even now where I'm at, I think it's helpful to grow from there, finding places to teach private lessons, subbing certain jobs, violin group classes, even master classes, all that kind of stuff. So if you can basically manage that with the demanding schedule at the time of being a college student, I would highly recommend that to anybody.
So it's the figure skating thing. You didn't just like decide like at a certain point, I'm going to teach figure skate. You probably were you a figure skater when you were younger?
Yeah, yeah. So
Right.
oh God, when did I think I started when I was like 6 or so. Like
Okay.
my parents thought I was like kind of a natural because everybody around me was falling. It was like my brother's birthday party and I was just skating around. So they're like, all right, let's throw her in here. And yeah, it just kind of became a thing. So I did that. And then in high school, I stopped because I had to choose between music or skating. And I was like, well, music's
Oh,
my
that's too
career, so
bad.
I have to do it. Yeah, so it's been very nice to like get back out on the ice too, and it's like my own form of like working out and keeping myself healthy, but also
Oh.
then it's yeah taught me a lot. Like basically when I'm talking about teaching music, I say teaching, and then skating, I say coaching, and I got like my teaching, coaching. A lot of it's
Mhm.
the same, but they're
Mhm.
also two separate places, which feels very healthy to have.
Yeah, no, I like that. Kind of didn't even think about that, but I mean, heck, if you're lucky enough to have a solid support network at home or with your parents or whatever it is while you're student teaching, that's great. Because there are usually those days where, either it's a crisis of faith, where you're like, I don't know if this is right for me, or the mini crisis of a lesson that went wrong or didn't go great. Just somewhere to go with that energy and soundboard that is very healthy, very useful. And if you have that in place before you get into student teaching, that's not a bad thing.
Oh yeah. Now I don't know if you know the story of my was that my sophomore year of college, which was my first year in person because of the
Mm.
pandemic. But yeah, that year is my first year living alone in the city, like right in the loop, managing all of that and the demanding schedule of a double major. And I continued teaching private lessons, both in person and online. And the very first week that I moved into my dorm, my mom was rushed to the hospital, and a week later, diagnosed with leukemia. Just
Oh
all of a
no.
sudden, it was so crazy, so chaotic. And the fact that I still don't know how I did it. I talk to people about it now, and I'm like, that entire year she was getting chemo and then stem cell and was managing my first year in person. The pandemic was still pretty intense at that point too. So we were all masked up, and it felt very like isolating, even though we were finally together, like in
Yeah.
person at school. And I'm like, God, if I don't know how I made it through that year, but I did. I learned a lot. I think I did pretty well. And if I can do that, I can pretty much do anything. It's those moments where you get through like intense like crisis, and it's like, wow, I did that and I did things well. So I think I can like that gives me hope. Like I can manage student teaching then, and
Yeah.
um
That's a harder
yeah,
year than most people
it was a
have
tough time.
ever.
Yeah, it was very tough.
Your mom's okay?
Yeah, very lucky. She full recovery right now and is considered to be in remission.
That's
So
amazing. All right. Well,
yeah,
congrats to her.
very lucky. Yeah. What is your advice to the student teachers who are about to graduate and enter the professional teaching world on their own? So this is like in AKA me in like 6 months from now. For those that are getting ready
Yeah.
to start applying for jobs and going forward.
So okay. Yeah, that's a cool stage. I guess it's having a criteria for what you're looking for in a job, and then being willing.
Mhm.
Then there's the willingness to compromise that a little bit based on circumstance. I think is big. Practicing interview skills is huge. I went on, I think, two interviews after student teaching, and the absolute first one I ever went on was disastrous. Yes, I mean, I I think I answered every single question with a question for myself, and then talked myself around in so many circles I didn't remember what the original question was. Anyway, it was just like hot, sweaty disaster. So that taught me that this is a skill actually,
Mhm.
that you need to practice. So when I interviewed at the current high school that the high school I hope to die at or retire from, and CYSO is the same year. I It was Don Stinson. He's a great teacher. He's out at Joliet, published author. Check out his stuff. He's great. We would actually, because he was interviewing for jobs at the same time as me, so we would actually call each other up, cold call each other, and hit each other with like mundane interview questions. The classic, like, have you ever
Mhm.
dealt with a conflict with a coworker or a parent, and how did you resolve that? Those kind of questions. To
Mhm.
a little bit more out there things like, what did you do this morning? Those are the kind of questions you have to be prepared to answer in a way that's going to elicit some positive response from the interviewing board. So having all of that stuff real polished up was a big deal. I would absolutely recommend practicing those skills.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
curious. When you applied for positions, did you ever have to do multiple interviews? Because I had one friend that applied for a job and she had 3 interviews total, and then she was accepted to teach.
yeah, really, yeah, I think not, that's really standard these days.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hear horror stories about, okay, there's a phone interview. No, you fill out all your paperwork, and there's like a gauntlet of paperwork now, and it's
Mhm.
all sifted through using AI, I think, just to make, and they have like a machine searching for keywords, and if you make it through that one, then you get the phone interview. And if you do well on your phone interview, then you do your in-person interview. And if you do well there, then you go up to the next rung on the ladder, which is probably some teaching. And that might take place over one day or maybe even 2 days, depending on what kind of group of kids it is or what they're looking for. Some positions, it's band and orchestra that you have to teach. So one day is going to be in front of band and the next day is going to be in front of orchestra. And then finally is sort of the informal, formal interview with the principal, where it's like he just makes sure that you're not a maniac, or she makes sure you're not a crazy person, and gives the stamp of approval. And then there's maybe one more after that where you meet with HR, and then they do a little bit of a background check on you and make sure that you're not wanted for something in another state. So it's pretty intense for sure. When I interviewed Emily at Vernon Hills, I think they got me in and out in a day.
Oh, that's nice.
I did a panel interview with the other directors, band choir, and department chair, and then taught the kids. And then actually there was an interview panel with kids, which was very cool. They got to ask me questions.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
then, of course, I just turned that into an opportunity to ask them questions, which was a lot more fun to hear them talk than me. And then I got through that and met with the principal, and he asked me about, he said, so tell me about your other high school, the high school you teach at now, because I'm still at Naperville. And I just burst into tears, like ugly cried right in front of him, because I was just I was so sad thinking about leaving that high school. And that seemed to
Oh.
be what he wanted to see. So that was that. CYSO, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, was similar. I think I just taught a lesson. And then after the rehearsal, they all asked me some questions, all the other artistic staff members. So I think I got off pretty easy, honestly. I think it's more standard these days for it to be a heck of a lot more complicated.
Mhm. Yeah, which
So
is like in some ways I appreciate it. I mean, I
yeah,
would like it to be smooth for myself in the future and for any teachers applying for jobs. But applying to coach like figure skating lessons, they have a lot of like steps and stuff you need to take. And one of the things is like safe sport, which is like almost like 2 hour long course on like different forms of harassment and abuse. And it's like while I was taking it, I'm like, man, this is so long. But I was like, oh, but this is so good that they do this. Is that they're not just teaching you don't do bad things to children. It's like, how do you recognize if something is happening? And
sure.
that's very important. So I think, yeah,
Huge.
for every type of like applying for different teaching and coaching jobs, like it is a process, and I'm learning to love it because I know that there are good reasons for it. But
Oh
that's
yeah, the more
interesting to hear.
layers, I think the more layers you have to go through, that's not a bad thing. That means that it means enough to them to devote that much time and energy to the process.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been dying to ask this question. And I think anybody in the world would love your answer to this question. Do you have any time management or self care advice as a busy teacher?
Well, I like that part of there is self-care.
Mhm.
I didn't really understand this, but in my first job, I was working 7 days a week, just like absolutely annihilating myself every single day, just trying to be hyper, uber organized and prepared. And the assistant principal happened to be walking through the hallway on a Sunday, like much like today, and saying, "Dana, you're here every Sunday. I think you're here every Saturday. What's going on?" And I just told him, I was like, "No, I've got work to do. I got a lot of work to do. I got to do it all, you know." And he said, "You are headed towards burnout, man. You need to go home and you need to spend some more time outside of this place." And I just kind of like, I was like, he doesn't understand. He doesn't get it. So I just slid that right off my desk. And then the choir director started to notice that I was never going home. A great guy named Jim Yarborough at Naperville North High School. And he said to me something that oh boy, I didn't believe him at all. I thought he was totally wrong and selfish. And he's like, if you're not happy, then the kids aren't going to be happy. The most important person whose happiness you should be interested in is your own. I mean, he kind of talked about it like, they're the mountain and we're the weather or something. And I was like, no, 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 no. The most important people in the classroom are the students. So I'd really want to shift it back onto them, but it catches up with you.
Mhm.
So back to the time management thing. I've learned about myself that if I do not have some physical activity in the morning, meaning uh, regular exercise. That I am just not a full, I'm not a full person. I'm not ready to be in front of students because my head's not together. So I need to be in motion before I even step through the door at work. So I get up every day at 5 and I do that. And then I try to make sure that I have enough time to get like even just a 5 minute bit of even gratitude meditation or some kind of mindfulness exercise. I've also learned that over caffeinating is a bad thing. So drawing the line at maybe whatever it is for you, where caffeine there's a diminishing returns at a certain point.
Mhm.
Um, uh, I do work 6 days of the week because I have youth orchestra on Saturday, but Sunday is kind of rarefied air. Having a place in your schedule where nothing can touch it. I try not to take any jobs or anything on a Sunday. We're on summer break right
Sorry.
now. It's
Oh,
okay.
I
No,
was
it's
gonna
okay.
say.
It's summer break right now. It's okay. But I try not to let anything touch my Sunday because I want a nice full day with my family. And that's the other ththing. Like I've known enough teachers at this point that feel like they have to make a choice between having a family and having a career. And I feel like that's a false choice. If you're at a program or at a school where you feel like that is sort of understood, that if your car is not in the parking lot um, uh, beyond 5 p.m. and that's unacceptable, that's not a real healthy work environment to be in. So having a good, this is the first day I was here. I was like, all right, we're not going home, right? And the band director walks by my office. He's like, it's quitting time. I was like, it's 15 minutes after the kids are gone. He's like, yeah, let's go. So I've kind of like leaned into that a little bit. And honestly, I found that it does not make me a worse teacher. In fact, it makes me a better teacher because I'm now drawing firmer boundaries between my work life and my personal life. And boy, I used to think that line needed to be blurry. Like if I'm at home, I'm going to be on my phone. I'm going to be answering emails. I'm going to be researching scores. I'm going to be texting other conductors about repertoire. I need to constantly be getting better and on the go. Um, I don't think that's sustainable.
Mm.
So that's some hard-won advice from me. Um, Maybe that's about shame and guilt. Do not be ashamed to take time for yourself. Um, Guilt is something that I think every teacher feels, and it's a real hard trap to avoid because there's always something more you could be doing for your kids. There's always something more you could be doing to be a better teacher. There's always something more you could be doing to be more prepared for Monday. But that's the problem. I mean, I think that there's never a point at which you're like, well, I've reached it. I am at the nirvana of teaching. Everything is perfect and in place. I think it's just accepting that it's messy. It's education. It's a science and an art. Art is not clean.
Mhm.
It has to be a little messy for it to be exciting, for it to be dynamic, for it to be art. Um, so I think that that's important to not feel bad about, Uh, when people tell me, gosh, that work's going to be there in the morning, I don't need to do it all right now. I remember the way I used to feel about that. It used to make me feel lazy. Now I got uncompleted work on my desk. It needs to be clear. So when I walk in the morning, I got a clear desk.
Yeah,
That's
you're
that's
speaking like directly to me right now.
mm,
Because yesterday, I coached Saturday mornings, early in the morning. So I had coaching, and then in the evening, I had rehearsal for the opera, and the whole rest of my day was open. And I'm like, I have a lot that I'm like working on, like side projects and stuff right now, like just keeping my summer busy. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like I can get some practice done. I can do all my like stuff I didn't get to do during the week. Wrapping up 2 summer courses too. I'm like, I'll do all that during the rest of my day. I got like whole open day. But I was pretty sick yesterday. I think it's a mix of allergies and just like, stuff. So I just was not feeling good. And I was like, if I try to push myself to do a bunch of work during the day, I'm not going to make it through this rehearsal tonight. And
mhm.
that is what is important right now. And yeah, you're right. It's that shame and guilt. I felt so guilty the whole day that I took time to rest. And like, I'm not the kind of person that can like nap during the daytime. I just can't. Like, I feel like I have to be awake, but I almost like, I was like falling asleep. I was that just not well, like needed the rest. And yeah, no, I think that's very important to mention. Yeah, a lot of people do feel that shame and guilt. And I mean, ultimately, if you want to survive and be able to do the important things well, you have to take care of yourself.
I think our relationship, and sorry, this goes a little bit broad, but I do think our relationship with work in this this culture is maybe not super healthy. Um, you know, there's some pride that people have when they talk about going to work sick. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you hear war stories, band and orchestra directors, choir directors too. Like, yeah, I had a 104 flu and I was still at my pit orchestra rehearsal or whatever it was. I'd never miss a tech week rehearsal because, there's the only level of sick that's acceptable is dead, to miss those things. So I just don't think it's terribly healthy. Um, Ultimately, there is no such thing as an educational emergency. If I don't show up to school on Tuesday because I have a fever, or my son has a fever, I don't think anyone's going to die. you know, like if they don't hear what my opinion is of how Vivaldi fits into the schema of the Baroque genre of classical music. Yeah, I don't think anyone is going to be God too unalterably changed. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's an important lesson as well. I think that I'm still learning, that there is a time to take some time for yourself, and that's
Mm-hmm.
that should be as high a priority, if not higher a priority, as your work, held maybe evenly from one hand to another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I'm curious. If we were talking about burnout, do you feel that you get to a point of burnout like every day? I know that's a thing for a lot of teachers, or do you kind of like manage where you don't feel that?
Yeah, not daily. Usually it's seasonal. Like,
Yeah, that exactly.
I was just talking to my wife about the musical, which is, it's a really cool thing. I mean, what an
Mm-hmm.
awesome production and process and opportunity for collaboration, but it's also so hard. It's so much time, it's so much study, it's terrifically challenging. Um, Tech Week in particular, and at our high school, we work real hard on the musical. So it's not a tech week, it's like 2 tech weeks or 2.5 tech weeks where you're every day rehearsing until 7. So it's I think that goes back to my point about knowing where to go when your cup is not overflowing.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you find inspiration? How do you center yourself? Um, and people have different tricks, where what their true north is. Knowing where that is for you, I think, is important. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone has a different answer. Just like when you're going through an existential crisis, you don't know what the purpose of your existence is. There's no one answer that works for everybody. It's important that you pursue those questions and know what those answers are. And maybe those answers change daily, and maybe they're task oriented, like it's just like finding something about a composer that you're working on right now that gets you interested. Um, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, cool. Good. And then to end on a positive note, do you have a teaching memory, something happy that makes you smile that you'd like to share to end with something more positive and upbeat? I think we've been mostly positive, but
Yeah,
so.
right. Well, yeah, geez. Well, I mean, I've been teaching for, I think, 20 years. I think that's right. 20 years. So, it's so hard to pick, one. I just have kind of a smattering of really great memories. Remember, remember, I was encouraged to plan a trip to plan my first orchestra tour. Like, don't go through a tour company. Tour companies are great, by the way, and I would absolutely recommend them now. But I had a teacher who encouraged me to plan my own trip, and I planned a tour to San Francisco and booked the hotels and the air and managed all of the tours of the various neighborhoods in San Francisco, having never been there myself. And I remember how little sleep and how nervous I was that entire year leading up to it. But then when we hit the ground in San Francisco, and there were those like around the corner moments where I knew what the kids were about to see before they saw it. and being able to tell them, okay, now down this alley, there's this really great place that makes fortune cookies, and you can make your own fortunes to put in there. Just or when we went to Muir Woods for the first time and breathing in the prehistoric air of those giant trees. It's like I think a lot of my memories are about the light bulb moments or the really cool connection moments that you experience with the kids when you see them see it, when you feel them experience that connection or that first thing. That's just so intoxicatingly wonderful and beautiful. Uh, that's the tour piece. Could talk to you about that for 17 more podcasts, I think. But we're going to Spain next year. Last year we went to Paris, and I remember going to Arles and seeing the Roman aqueducts, even just seeing the Eiffel Tower, seeing the kids see the Eiffel Tower for the first time, explaining to the kids that classical music is not a singular genre of music. We talk about Western art music. They're like, it breaks down into music from the Renaissance, Baroque, classical, romantic, and seeing them make the connection between Beethoven and Mozart and Haydn. Dumb things like when we do sleigh ride at this high school, they have it snow on stage. And it's always like the kids are always like, what's going on? It's this kind of special thing that happens. And one year, it was like 3 years ago, the snow was in the cradle in like a really unfortunate way. And I guess people rocking the cradle, the snow cradle, I think it overturned. And instead of it just gently falling throughout the entire performance of Sleigh Ride, it fell in one clump at one time. And it was just this hilarious, like cataclysmic event on stage. I used to do pranks at my October concerts. Kind of gotten away from that, but we did a whole Scooby-Doo themed concert where we would have the Phantom going throughout the performance and wrecking something or jumping out at audience members. Just the fun of putting together those productions. Collaborations that I've had with Columbia College, a guy named Doug Lofstrom. That was my first year teaching, and we did this awesome collaboration with them. Done some really exciting collaborations with other high school orchestras, choirs. When I think about what I get paid to do, which is hang out with musicians all day and just make music, I have to like pinch myself because it seems like a surreal existence that I get to do this and people let me do this and they pay me for it. It's kind of incredible. So anytime I think that's maybe my true north, whenever I'm feeling like, oh, geez, this is so hard, or I'm so busy. When I really think about what I'm doing, it's just so fun.
Yeah, I love those moments. Yeah, I've had a few of those moments already too. Like when I started coaching skating for the first time, which felt like a side thing. And like when I got my first check, I was like, you're paying me for that? Like in my head, I was saying it in my head, I'm like, you're paying me for this? I love this. I love working with kids. I'm becoming a better teacher. Like I'm learning from here. But yeah, no, I should be paid. That's right. But yeah, those moments are, yeah, definitely really incredible. Yeah, I guess my teaching memories of my 4 short years of teaching and a little bit of coaching probably aren't the most of an impact to the students yet or rewarding yet like you have. But for me, it's just the fun, silly moments that we have. When my first time coaching skating, I was working with like a huge group of 3-year-olds, and it was very terrifying to have all those little kids all on the ice, and just teaching them how to walk, and you're holding them up. It's like it's a workout. And then just I was working with this one little boy, and he just looked up at me and he's like, "You smell like gummy bears." And I'm like, this could have went way worse. It could have been something else. But just this like just so adorable. Like I was working really hard to manage this whole class, and then like just to have that sweet moment, it was like kind of that silly reminder, that fun reminder. It's like I'm happy I'm doing what I'm doing.
Nice.
And yeah, my first time ever teaching a 5-year-old violin. She's a student I definitely won't forget. She was really good. Like she picked it up pretty quickly, and we got pretty far. And there was a moment she went to go put the violin up on her shoulder, but she had a very short neck, so she wasn't using like a shoulder rest or anything yet. And it kind of just like flung over her shoulder and slid on the shirt, and then she let go and it went falling down the other way. And seeing her reaction to it, she's like, "Oh no," and like picking it up and having that fun like silly kind of characteristics, the right word, demeanor sort of thing, especially when you're studying in music school, like working really hard and everything just seems so serious. And to have those like fun, silly moments, I think those are the ones that stick with me the most as of right now. I'm sure I'll have more down the line. But yeah, no, that's really great to hear. Sorry for taking up your free Sunday.
It wasn't going to be free. It gave me an excuse to get to work, which I needed desperately, because I've been suffering from inertia. So thank you for that. I needed the kick. I needed the nudge.
All right, thank you everyone for listening. If you have any feedback, you can reach us at dissonantdialogues@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail at 872-216-9032 with your feedback. Or if you'd like to be a guest, if you have topic ideas or questions, you can also give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok. We are Dissonant Dialogues on there. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for this time. It was super fun.
Hi, Claire. Oh, I'm nervous. This is real. Podcast energy.
I took magic class in 7th grade. So I got that going for me. At that point, I was like, okay, I really got to figure out how to make this not look like a newspaper that somebody slept on.
Like, you smell like gummy bears. So my co-host, she edits the episodes, basically. And she's a great editor, so.